I said before, I'm skipping questions 4 and 5 to talk about the social policies around the world that best support changing families. So we're going to look at what some other countries do in comparison to what we do. Okay. The U.S. lags far behind many other post-industrial societies in adopting social policies that support new family forms. We're behind in civil partnerships and marriage laws and providing universal health care and guaranteed parental leave regardless of gender, educational access or free education, and universal daycare. We'll talk about some of these things a little bit later, like educational access when we get to the education chapter and stuff like this. But this chart is in your book, but it lists parental leave for two-parent families in 27 countries. So if we look at the chart, where is the United States? They're way down over here, right? So how many days of paid leave does the United States guarantee parents? That would be 0. The United States does not guarantee any paid leave. How many days of unpaid leave do they guarantee? So you have 24 days. You know, if you need to go, like you just had a kid, you want to sort of take care of the kid for a while, you're guaranteed 24 days of unpaid leave. After that, your employer can pretty much do with it. Compare that to, say, France. How many days of guaranteed paid leave did they get? 22, which is more than 0, but 22 really isn't a whole lot of, paid leave. But how many days of guaranteed unpaid leave do they have? 308. Well, it's 296, which gives us a total of 318 days of leave. So yeah, they can take almost an entire year off and still have their job to come back to, guaranteed. And then Spain is right up there with 312 as well.
Germany's not that bad. Germany's not that bad.
Yeah, Germany gives you 170 days total, 47 of them paid. So the idea here is that when it comes to supporting parents that want time to sort of start taking care of their kids, in comparison, we really don't do a very great job of supporting parents. Even though we hear so much about how important the family is and supporting the family and yada, 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 it's not really reflected in our policy. Parents probably have a much easier time in France than they do in the U.S. I'll also add to that, in France, you have this right whether you're the mother or the father. In the U.S., it's kind of more for the mothers than it is the fathers. That's changing slightly, but it's much easier for mothers to get maternity leave than it is for paternity leave, or parental leave, as it's sometimes being called now. Okay? The U.S. social policy in general stresses the principle of individual opportunity. We stress policies aimed at providing a chance to succeed or fail in the labor market, but not at creating programs of family support for everyone. So we have stuff like unemployment insurance and things like that sort of help you a little bit in the job market. You have job training, all of that sort of stuff. But we don't really support the family so much. Again, 20-something days of leave guaranteed, and that's about it. We, by and large, don't provide help with daycare or other child care expenses, and many jobs don't have built-in child care. American social policy has tended to focus more on whether and how to prevent discrimination and far less on creating universal family support programs. So we're kind of focused on, we don't want to discriminate on gender, you're great, and there's no discrimination. But many other countries sort of focus on, let's just make everything available to everyone. And we continue to debate the advantages and disadvantages of the family revolution rather than accepting that whatever we think, it's kind of inevitable. It's already here. And we don't really restructure other institutions to fit around those new ideas. And they were kind of talking about that in the Penn and Teller video the other day, too. We spend so much time arguing about which form is right, what ideas are right, what's wrong with this, what's wrong with that. When in reality, all we do is end up talking circles around each other. Because no matter if it was decided tomorrow that, you're right, this is great, this is wrong, our society's already changed. And it's not really going to go back to what it was. So the idea here is instead of focusing on who's right and who's wrong, we should probably just accept that this is what it is now and we need to adjust. That's what a lot of other countries have done. This next group of stuff is in your book. But it kind of compares child care around the world and the options that parents have around the world and illustrates the idea of how different countries look at supporting parents and families. So in the United States, parents often struggle to find affordable, high-quality child care for the most part without help from the government. Low-income families in some cases can find subsidized child care if they meet certain criteria, but higher-income families are not eligible for such services. Census figures show that 48% of children 4 years and younger with working mothers were cared for by relatives, and the number of stay-at-home mothers has declined since 2008. We have approximately 5 million stay-at-home moms right now. So in the U.S., you're largely on your own for child care, unless you're very low income, and then you can get subsidized child care, which will pay for a portion of that. So most of what we're seeing is that many kids that had working parents are cared for by relatives. Relatives like grandparents, maybe cousins, maybe brothers and sisters, whatever the case may be. Because child care is expensive, and most of us can't really afford professional daycare or anything like that. So this is the U.S. Yep.
Is that woman skirting bras zucchini? Yeah. I don't see it on other.
Maybe she's
I think
she's soaking it.
Zucchini.
I don't know. Did you like marinate zucchini maybe to change the flavor? So maybe that's what they were going for when they set up the stock photo.
Maybe it's on one of those like. Or maybe she's just.
I know that's completely irrelevant.
Maybe it's Photoshop.
Well, it's a stock photo is what it is. We were talking about before with the diversity in marketing. It's a stock photo.
And of course,
So what they were going for is, let's show a busy mom who's got the baby in one hand, she's on the phone, and she's cooking. They just didn't really think it through, maybe.
Can we Photoshop the
Let's-
as well?
yes.
I'm not really, I don't know, I'm not really seeing much of a hot plate there either. I'm just seeing that sitting on the counter.
It could just be that she's kind of confused and she doesn't know what to do. She's on the phone. She's
Maybe. Maybe that's what they were going for. See how shitty it is in the U.S.? She's got so much on her mind, she doesn't realize she's not actually cooking. Maybe that's what they're going for.
That baby looks really young to be crying and facing out like that.
Yeah, that maybe don't look older than maybe 4 months.
Toddler actors are expensive. Infant actors are expensive. There are all kinds of laws about how long you can keep them on set. So again, they're working with what they got, maybe.
Yes, we're not providing snacks.
You know, that's why, like, Mary-Kate and Ashley played the same role for years, because you can work 2 kids longer than you can 1. All right. So that's the breakdown in the U.S. We're largely left on our own in terms of childcare, and we've talked a lot about how that impacts families. Let's look at some of the other countries. Sweden, for example, they have a use it or lose it paid parental leave that encourages greater involvement of fathers because leave days cannot be transferred. Parents may take up to 480 total parental leave days when a child is born or adopted, and the government subsidizes child care for its citizens. So whether mother or father, you have a newborn child or you adopt a child, you can automatically take up to 480 total parental leave days, which is like a year and a half almost. Yeah. And that is a use it or lose it. So if you have a new kid, you have those 480 days. If you don't take them, you can't just transfer them. Like my kid's 4 now, when I take some of my days. Or I've got kid number 2, can I get 960 days now? No. You have to use them or lose them. So it's the idea that if you want those days off, you better take them. So in theory,
child, though? Like,
yes.
You have one 1 year and then like 2 years later you have another one, so you have 400
Yeah, in theory. So the thought is it encourages greater involvement of fathers, because if you want that time off, you better take it. You're going to lose it.
That bowl looks empty.
Again, stock photography. So don't expect. I have trained you all too well to look very closely at photos. haven't I? Sweden also subsidizes childcare. So as a parent, you're not paying for daycare in Sweden.
Where is it? There's a place at the hospital in Mississippi, in Tupelo, Mississippi. They actually have a round-the-clock daycare for its employees at the hospital. So, like, if you're working a night shift and you don't have no one to watch, as long as you give them 24 hours in the service, they will have a childcare supervisor or whatever you can call them there. So when you come in for your shift, there's somebody to watch you there.
And some companies do that. In Sweden, picture that countrywide. Because they kind of pay for childcare for you. Okay? We then talk about France. In France, the state provides free preschool for children from 2 years of age. A system of childminders helps to supplement daycare centers. A childminder receives training, undergoes regular inspections, and can care for up to 5 children at a time. So the idea here is, in the United States, when do parents go, oh, thank God, and can send the kids to school?
4. 3. Well, 3 for...
To public school.
5 and 6.
It's 5, usually, right? France, you have that option from 2. So not only do you get an additional 3 years of free childcare, this is more than just childcare, because what did I say that they pay for?
Leave.
First sentence up there. What is it that France is providing? It's preschool. So not only is it childcare, they're also starting educational lessons at 2.
Is that why they get out of school when they're like 15, 16 or old?
They're different systems of school, because in a lot of Europe, in your later years of what we consider high school, you're actually doing specific job training type stuff.
Yeah,
Where when you're finishing high school and going to university, high school-ish education in a lot of Europe is more equivalent to our associate degrees.
See, so I was thinking, I met a girl at the, the Jelly Belly factory in California. When I was like 13, and she was from Europe, and she was 17, and down to school, and had all kinds of training, and like, she was just here to see what America was like. And she says we suck.
Yeah, so in Europe, it's a completely different school system. They're kind of more focused on specific training than we are over here in the high school systems. But the idea of universal pre-K or preschool, which we'll talk about a little bit more in education, is something that is a highly resistant idea in this country. It is something that we do not want to pay for. It is something that comes up time and time again, and it is consistently shot down on the argument of what?
Taxes.
Not we're too young. What is it?
Taxes.
No.
Not Texas, but taxes.
Basically, we're broke. That's the argument. We don't want, why pay for universal pre-K or preschool because we're broke? If you want your kid to be in preschool, it's America. Pay for it yourself.
Where I
But-
went to school, their preschool is like income-based preschool. Like if the parents make over this, their kid can't go there.
But that falls again into the, when you're married, you don't qualify for it, even if you're struggling to make ends meet. Preschool is still ridiculously expensive. You pay still like $13 or $15 a day depending on the preschool, and you have to pay for meals. And I have a 3-year-old. I was gonna say this. Excited.
Didn't work out that way. Yeah. So that's one argument of it's incredibly expensive. So why would we pay for it for everyone? But the counter argument is, do I have any business people in the room that know what ROI is? The concept of ROI? ROI is the return on investment. It's for every dollar you invest in something, how much do you get back? When we're talking about universal pre-K, yeah, universal pre-K or preschool is pretty expensive. It would be an expense for a country to do. But anyone know how it rates on the ROI chart? It's one of the most successful programs in the country. For every dollar we put into universal preschool, we get $6 back in terms of economic production for those kids when they grow up and go out into the workforce. Because we start education earlier, they tend to learn more by the time they're out of high school. And they get better.
Why don't we do it then?
Because we're broke, and this is America. If you want your kids to go to preschool, you pay for it. That is literally the argument.
I mean, it's ROI is showing that much of a return. That's something that we should really think about then.
Those are the two sides of the argument. One is it's a good investment. It's a good investment. We get a lot of money back in terms of economic production. It's good for families because their kids are learning at an earlier age and childcare is taken care of. That's one side of it. The other side of the argument is we spend too much damn money anyway. We don't want, I'm not going to raise taxes to pay for this. If you want your kid to go to preschool, you pay for preschool. That's your decision. Those are the two sides of the argument. And beyond that, I can't really tell you why people think this or that. That's the debate that goes on. Okay, so that's France. Final place we look at is in Japan, where a chronic child care shortage makes finding daycare slots a competitive process. Worried that women would choose either a career or motherhood, Japan in 2008 announced a 10-year goal of providing working parents with daycare for children ages 1 to 5. So Japan is working on a system where kids from 1 to 5 will have daycare. Why do you think they specifically say worried that women would choose either a career or motherhood?
Because in Japan they still have the very old family values.
So what was going on in Japan that caused them to have this worry?
Isn't that when we were starting to have our economic issues?
Yes, but I'm talking about family-wise. What was going on? They said, "Oh, we need to change the stuff here."
Overpopulation?
The exact opposite, actually. That's China.
Was that when the Japanese people started committing suicide because they were overworked? Is that what?
That's China too.
I thought it was Japan also.
Well, China's where we heard mostly about it. I don't know specifically about Japan. But there was a trend in Japan that childbirths were actually getting really, really, really low. And so the government said, you know what, we need to look at something here because it seems that a lot of young women are choosing a career instead of becoming mothers. And I guess the assumption was that if you make it easier for families to do both, then it's not one or the other choice.
I heard that it's because guys would rather play video games than talk to girls in Japan.
That is possible too. We also, and again, this is more China than Japan, I think. But it actually is more China than Japan. But China, with their one-kid policy rule because of overpopulation and the sort of preference for having a male child, has led to many, many men and not enough women to marry.
Isn't China the place too that like they can like kill you if you have more than one kid, you break the law or something stupid?
You're fined.
Yeah.
Outrageous fines, but yeah, they don't, come in and murder you.
Well, there was one like.
What you do have, and what I was just talking about, is there's a pretty big pressure to that in the culture. Sort of the eldest child is the male child is kind of preferred over girls to a certain extent. So if couples got one child for a long time, if it was the daughter, that daughter might meet an untimely end or disappear sometimes. So they could try for a boy. That was a
And then
trend.
flush them down the toilet.
I don't know. I'm talking about statistical trends overall.
No.
I think the flushing down the toilet is more of an urban legend than anything
No,
else.
I was on the CNN the other day. I was at the library and there was an article.
Yeah, okay, one random news story in 200-something years does not a trend make.
Flushed your kid down the toilet.
All right. Any overall questions? The idea here is, with these competing policies, where do you think you would rather be a parent?
America, always.
Yeah.
Okay, so which policies would you rather have?
This would be
Then-
nice to be in America.
I don't know. This is new, so I don't know.
But yes, I am.
Japan is working on providing daycare for kids age 1 to 5. France has universal preschool from 2 years old. Sweden has guaranteed parental leave for mom or dad, 480 days, and government subsidized childcare. And the U.S. is figured out.
With the France thing, is that something like, okay, you first have your baby, you take your 6 weeks maternity leave, then you go back to work for a little while, and then you use it, like let's say, your child gets sick and you want to take a week or two off, can you do it that way, or do you have to do the full 480 at the same time?
That's Sweden, and I believe it's at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And you also have to realize that in Europe, we're not talking about, jobs that have like 3 days vacation or a week vacation. Most jobs in Europe, you have 3 months off.
Okay, so really you could spend the whole first year on paid leave, and then you can send them to paid childcare.
Ish. I don't know. When we're going back and looking at the chart from a few slides ago, it would vary depending on your job in a lot of countries. Like Sweden will guarantee 47 days of paid leave. And then they guarantee, I can't even see that number on the chart.
300.
Oops. According to this study, which was in 2009, it was 116 of unpaid for a total of 163 days that were guaranteed, probably by law at some point in time. Your sociological perspective towards the end of the book is talking about the 480 days in take it or leave it leave, which is probably a slightly different program of policy. And all of these things are largely going to vary depending on your employer. I'm pretty sure there are some jobs in the U.S. where you can get paid parental leave. It's just that this is what's guaranteed by law. Okay.
Yeah, we don't do anything paid leave here. Like, I mean, very few situations get paid leave.
Does the Sweden thing count for people with green cards?
I would assume.
Like not.
I honestly don't know, but I would assume. Because, I mean, that would kind of suck. If you work here and pay taxes, but you're not a citizen, so you don't get this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess for
I don't think that would
that's
fly.
the one with the they start kids at 2 years old, right?
Yeah.
I guess that one would probably be a really good one, and that would probably also help us when it comes, like, as the children get older at a business standpoint, maybe, if we better educated, so they'll be able to, like, have better jobs, maybe, if our economic system works better.
Okay. So overall here, ideas of the family have changed. There are a lot of different ideas why, and a lot of different ideas of what we should be doing about it. And that's kind of the overall tone of this chapter. Next time, we will end up reviewing, so I'm once again a day behind the schedule, and yeah, I'm not going to release another revised schedule yet. So just remember, we won't be testing on Tuesday, we'll be reviewing. The test will be pushed back to Thursday. This review will be over the family chapter, the gender and sexuality chapter, and the race and ethnicity chapter. I'll be writing it this weekend, so your review sheet will be up by Sunday. See you next time.